Hello and welcome back to Speed Freak Garage, home of PowerSports on YouTube. Now before you go, whoa, what did I miss? You haven't missed anything. I'm replacing all 4 wheel hubs and bearings. That has really nothing to do with drifting, it's just regular maintenance, so I'm not really gonna bother making a video about that, although it has been kind of a nightmare, but there's plenty of documentation online already. So what I am doing that I forgot to start the video was I bought a 391 diff, and I actually found an open differential, which is much easier to weld. The 391 is a good ratio for drifting. It needs to be welded up, of course. So I took the cover off. It's a 16 millimeter. I don't get what BMW's issue is with using 16 millimeter. But all you do is you take the drain plugs out, you let it drain. In this case, this one was already luckily empty. Then you release the bolts, and the cover actually pretty much just falls off when the bolts come out. So make sure you got a hand on the cover when you're releasing the bolts, and it'll come right off. And so now we got to get this welded up. I don't know how to weld. I have a welder, but I don't have welding gas. So we'll probably take it somewhere professional that knows what they're doing and have a professional weld it up, because down the line it's going to be holding a lot of horsepower, so it needs to be done right. So I don't know, we'll see how that goes. So the video will, blink and come back, and we'll have a welded diff that we have to put back together, and I'll talk about that. This has a paper gasket. You could always scrape this off and replace the paper gasket with RTV. You could try reusing the paper gasket. It probably won't work so well. So I'm gonna look around online, see what my options are. If a paper gasket's super cheap, I'll just buy a paper gasket. But if it's not, then I'll use RTV. RTV is kind of a pain in the ass though. So yeah. Anyway, we'll be back in a second. Getting the paper gasket off was way easier than I expected. I just lifted it with one hand and kind of pushed it, scraped it up with the other. It came right off. Now all I need to do is just clean this surface up. There's some stuff here that's got to be cleaned off and some stuff here that's got to be cleaned off. And then this will be ready for a new paper gasket. So I found a paper gasket including 2-day shipping free for only 18 bucks, which, yeah, RTV is cheaper, but for my own sanity, I just went ahead and got the paper gasket. So I'll have to clean this surface up. After this comes back from welding, I'll clean this surface up. So yeah, not too bad. So before I forget to take the video, we are going to have to take the old differential out. I did order a new paper gasket just for my own sanity. 99% of the people that do this use RTV, so don't worry, RTV's fine. To get the diff out, I believe, don't quote me, there's 3 main bolts, the 2 ear bolts in the back, and then there's one hiding up front. But first, obviously, you want to disconnect both axles and carefully hang them out of the way. In this case, I'm removing the axle because I have to replace the wheel hub, but that doesn't really matter. But anyway, you got to get your axles disconnected. Make sure you disconnect your speed sensor and unclip it and hang it out of the way somewhere safe. And then you got to disconnect, of course, the drive shaft. And then the diff's pretty heavy. I would say it's at least 50, 60 pounds. So you want to have a jack under it or something. You definitely don't want that to fall on you. And I wish I would have had a chance to clean the underbody of this car because it's a mess. So that's another mistake I made, is not running this through a car wash before I took the top apart. So, yep, I'm gonna get going on that. I almost forgot an important note that you're going to need E-Torx to get the axles off. Wonderful German crap. Special tools required. Always. Another note, I'm gonna have to drop the sway bar because it's kind of in the way, and also I'm having trouble getting these loose, so I'm gonna spray some rust penetrant on them and hope they come loose, because I don't know if my impact can't do it. I'm sure not gonna be able to do it by hand because the e-brake's pretty worn out and it only grabs so strong anyway. Yep, so gotta drop the sway bar, rust penetrant. Okay, so as you can see, all I did was just drop the sway bar down. Obviously it's under the diff right now, but you can just swing it back up, back out of the way once you get all your bolts and stuff released. So there's no need to release it from up here. I would not recommend attempting that. So yeah. Okay, so we got this axle down. So that's the bare minimum you got to do really to get the diff out. You can see on this side I took the axle out because, like I said, I'm replacing the wheel hubs. That's not really part of this, and then you can see I disconnected the plug and I tucked it up so it won't get pinched or caught when we take the diff down. So I'm gonna pull this axle out and then I'm gonna work on the wheel hubs, and then I'm gonna loosen, not remove, I'm gonna loosen the bolts. Well, crap, I need to do the drive shaft too, and then I guess I need to support it so it doesn't fall. Man. So basically, I've got to lower the car back down to where my small transmission jack can support this. And then I can go and start loosening these bolts. Can loosen the bolts first, don't remove them. Same for the drive shaft. Loosen the drive shaft bolts, don't remove them. Then lower the car down to where the transmission jack can support it. And once it's supported, then I can remove the bolts and support the drive shaft and then pull this back and out. But that's probably several days, if not a week away. I mean, it's gonna be the same video, but I mean, I got a lot of other work to do while this is out, so yeah. Okay, so we got the differential cover back on. I torqued the bolts to 30 foot-pounds in a star pattern. This was 40 foot-pounds with a new crush washer for this too. So now we just gotta get the old one out and get the new one with the welded diff in. And you can see here, oh yeah, it's welded. And it is smooth as butter, brand new bearings. Oh yes. Okay, so I forgot to break loose the drive shaft. So for any of you who also forget to break loose the drive shaft before you disconnect the axles, because obviously putting the axles back in is gonna be a pain. So get a wrench, the fattest wrench that you can fit through the yoke, get it all the way through the yoke, and then you can take a wrench as a cheater wrench to hold the yoke, and then you can break the nuts loose. So that's what I did, saved my life, because I definitely do not want to put the axles back in because we're so close. So the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna get the car back down to the floor and get our transmission jack over here and get this diff out. Okay, so we got the differential supported by the transmission jack. Got a little pressure on it, so now we can get those 3 bolts completely out and then slowly lower it to the ground. It's gonna come out, it's gonna come back and down and then out. So back, down, out. And by out, I mean, poof, and things like 60 to 80 pounds. Now there's a guy, a friend of mine in town who has just changed his E36 differential also, and he did it by hand without a jack, but he's really strong. I use a transmission jack because I'm just a weak computer nerd, but if you're really strong and you got a friend to keep an eye out for you, then you might be able to do it without one. So let's get started. I completely forgot about the drive shaft, so make sure you take your drive shaft nuts off, and then you gotta get some support under it because it's gonna fall. The problem is the only thing I have is not near tall enough, so the drive shaft's gonna kind of swing down a little bit. Yeah, it'd be better to get some good support on it. I don't know, I might be able to use those wood blocks, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, and we were able to support the drive shaft with the jack stand and wood blocks, so now we can continue to get these 3 bolts out. Okay, so you can see I got the diff loose. It's kind of coming down, but I can't. The drive shaft is seized to the diff, so I gotta persuade it with a rubber mallet, I guess, to get it to break free. Maybe try and pry on it a little bit right there, because it's not letting the diff come out. It's literally stuck to the drive shaft. Okay, so I very carefully persuaded it with a claw hammer, and it finally popped loose. So we should be able to get the diff out now. Okay, so I've stopped halfway to kind of show you some issues I'm having. So I'm hitting here on the trunk well, and I'm hitting up there, and the sway bar got in the way. The sway bar was supposed to stay up out of the way, and now it's kind of caught. I'm not really sure what to do. I kind of screwed myself here because the sway bar should have been up out of the way. I probably should have zip tied it up there or something, so that's gonna make this a lot more difficult. Okay, it took a few minutes of up and down, but I finally got the sway bar back out of the way, and now I'm really, as soon as I lower this is gonna fall out. Honestly, I wish I was strong enough to basically bench press this differential, because I wouldn't have to deal with this transmission jack. It makes things very complicated, and I feel like if you just freaking bench press this thing up there, it'd be a lot easier, honestly, but I can't do that, so I'm stuck with the transmission jack. Okay, so this time I zip tied the sway bar up out of the way using the drain hole and a rust hole. So I got the sway bar out of the way at least. Now it's time I need to clean up the threads on those mounting tabs because they were in pretty bad shape. But other than that, the new diff's ready to go in. Okay, to get the differential back in, you're gonna have to raise it up I'd say about halfway. Then you're gonna have to tilt it up by hand and get it up in the cradle up there. And then you can slowly keep raising it as you push it forward. Watch out for all this back here. But you gotta make sure you get the drive shaft lined up with that. So you're putting the diff up and in, and you're putting the drive shaft in at the same time. It's probably not technically a one-person job, but I'm gonna try. Also, watch out for your wire up there. Try not to pinch that or damage it. So yeah, lots of things to watch for as you're going up. Okay, so she's in. It was not easy. Took a good 10 minutes of up, over, up, like how to describe it. So you gotta go up and then in, and there's little notches and shit on the bottom of the differential casing that get in the way, and this gets in the way. Yeah, so, but I got it in. I remembered the drive shaft, so now we got to get our 3 mounting bolts not tight. We're not going to tighten them yet. We're just going to get them in there. Then we're going to get the differential bolts in there, obviously not tight. Sorry, not differential. Drive shaft bolts in there, not tight. And then we can release this out of the way, and then we can get the axles on, and then hopefully this destroyed parking brake will be strong enough to hold this from spinning while I torque down the drive shaft and the axle bolts, but I think that's going to cause us some problems, so we'll see. Anyway, let's continue on with getting the bolts tight, getting the bolts in. Okay, we have our torque wrench set on 59 foot-pounds, and we are now going to torque the 3 mounting bolts to spec, which is, again, 59 foot-pounds. Okay, so we got the 3 mounting bolts tight. We got the sway bar in and tight. However, I left the fill plug loose, and the drive shaft, of course, is still loose. So we got to remember, drive shaft's loose, fill plug is loose and empty. So the next step, make sure you get some good quality anti-seize, very high quality anti-seize, and put it on your splines and be very liberal. Do not get it on the threads, of course, but make sure you get plenty of anti-seize on the splines, because if you don't, then these axles will never come back out. And a lot of people end up having to buy all new control arms purely because the previous owner did not use anti-seize. So use anti-seize, otherwise you're going to end up buying a new control arm. All right, let's get these axles in. So unless you have a brand new axle and a brand new hub, they're going to be hard to get in. Now in this case I have a new hub, but the axle's still old. So you just want to get the axle in far enough that you can get the nut on it. And in this case I'm stuck reusing the old nut for now because they sent me the M3 nuts, the bastards. Fucking screwed me over. I waited more than a week for the nuts and they were the wrong fucking nuts. But anyway, so you can then get your impact and just set it on the lowest setting and just use the impact to run the axle in, and hopefully you can kind of hold it in place. But then of course you want to use a new nut, so I'm a little screwed on that. But and you can do the same for the other one. So just, you know, you get it in and you can kind of tap on it lightly, very lightly tap on it to get it through just far enough to get that nut on. You don't want to like hammer on it or anything because you can mess up your CVs. Well, I just found a huge mistake. I wasn't supposed to put the sway bar back up until after the axles went in. As you can see, oh man. All right, take the fucking sway bar back down and probably gonna have to take the fucking axle out. Okay, so everything's installed. I got these bolts snug. The axle nut is snug but not tight. I put the brakes back on. Obviously you don't have to remove the brake assemblies because I was replacing the wheel hub. So the axle of course will come out without removing all this extra stuff. But anyway, we need the e-brake, hopefully strong enough, because we need to get 50 foot-pounds on each one of these. And they do have a lock mechanism, so you don't really have to worry too much about them once they're tight. Now, those shouldn't be a problem. In fact, I would assume even just holding this, I'll be able to get 50 foot-pounds because there's a lot of resistance from the rust on the brakes. Worst case, I have to pull the e-brake, torque, release the e-brake, turn, pull the e-brake, torque, release, turn, pull, you know, blah, 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 over and over. That's going to take a while. Hopefully not. But I definitely have to do that on this. This is going to be a pain. And also, you can see how there's a gap. You want to make sure that gap pulls down evenly because there's like a little alignment thing inside here that keeps it aligned. So you don't want to like mess that up. You want to make sure it's even and that it pulls down flush. So we're going to go ahead and get everything, well, get these torqued. Can't get a torque wrench on these, so we'll just get them tight. I'm going to pull each one off, Loctite it, and then put it back on. Let's see. And then I'll probably have to put the wheels on and put the car on the ground. Well, man, I don't know. I'd like to be able to torque this. I think it was 185 foot-pounds. I'll double check. I'd really like to be able to torque this without putting the car back on the ground, because then I got to pull the center caps out of the wheels, which is not fun. So I don't know. Hopefully the e-brake's strong enough to get torque on this, but we'll see. Pro tip, don't forget to reconnect your speedometer, your speed sensor. I forgot to do that, and you know, tuck it up on the clip. Yeah, I feel smart. Almost forgot that. Okay, so all the bolts are torqued and tight and good and checked. And so now we got gear oil, 75 W90 gear oil. Unfortunately, after maybe 100 miles or so, we'll have to drain it all and do it again because there could be slag left. The guy who welded it said he washed it out several times, but he said, please change the oil after a couple miles just in case. So definitely gonna do that. We got a oil pump to make our lives easier, and it's a big oil pump for this thick stuff. Then we have our digital torque adapter and a big breaker bar for the nuts, which are 185 foot-pounds. Now, you're not supposed to reuse the nut, but I'm gonna have to, and just make little divots so it stays. And then when the new nuts arrive, if they ever arrive, because the fuckers keep sending me M3 nuts, even though their listing specifically states that it's for the regular 328i. So I'm getting a little annoyed, but I need to be able to drive the car to the exhaust shop and get the exhaust figured out, and drive it. I mean, it needs to be washed. So anyway, yep, I'll come back when all of this is done. I mean, really, this is the end of it. You put the fluid in. If you guys, you know, I guess I can explain it. So what you do is you pump it in until it overflows, and then you let it overflow, and when it stops overflowing, you know, like drip, drip, then you put the plug in and torque it down. Again, that's 40 foot-pounds, and that's it. You know, you just have to make sure the car is level. If you're on a slanted driveway, then that's not gonna work, and you could blow your diff up. So make sure the car is level. However you need to do that, friend's driveway, parking lot, whatever. So, yep. So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the end of I'm done with the video. I really don't like doing the videos anymore. It's just, I don't know. Don't get me started. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We now have a welded differential in our 96 BMW E36 budget drift convertible. So I will see you guys next time.
But tonight I'm letting it go. Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now. I'm gonna skip my breaks, I'm gonna make mistakes. I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this town. Look at those beautiful stars, I wanna drive